Yeah, it's Bomb Peeps. 787 here today. Double upload in one day, or maybe not. I don't know when I'll upload the two videos, if I'm being honest, but as of the day I'm recording this, today was the last day of Fortnite Chapter 2, Season 7, or as I call the Chapter 2 seasons, for this one, Season 17, because I just go by the official number rather than chapter plus season. Anyway, this season, it was really fun at the start. The only major problem was the UFOs. And then, oh god, they made so many, okay, I'm not going to say they made so many mistakes, there were a few things added or taken out that really made the game so bad. This season had gold all over it, but then it was thrown in the garbage. And one of the main reasons for that, in my opinion, the worst part about the season was...
Awesome.
What, Gare?
How much likes do you think we're gonna get?
I don't know. I'm recording a different video now, so you gotta go back to your room, okay?
About what?
About Fortnite. Sorry, that was my little brother. I just got done recording a video with him, opening some of the Pokemon cards he got. But anyway, my biggest issue with this season has to be related to the drop spots. What about the drop spots? Well, if I'm going into as much depth as I possibly can, which I'm clearly not going to do because I could spend hours on this video, but basically, over the course of the season, there were 3 drop spots every game where a ton of UFOs would spawn, and if you shot them down and killed the aliens, you'd be able to easily take the UFOs and use them to get around to different areas or try to kill different players. And the UFOs are in and of themselves are a whole different story. And then you also had the other flying saucers that they're also UFOs, but they're different kinds of UFOs, where they sucked you up in the sky. They could be used similar to that of a slipstream, but at the same time, they were really bad off spawn because it would suck you up into it, and you didn't have the choice whether you wanted to go into it or not. It forcefully sucked you up into the saucer, made you go through a minigame, and then spat you out close to zone. Now, or close to where the next zone would be. And a lot of the reason why the minigame saucers were so bad is because it didn't matter if you were in the middle of a fight. It didn't matter if your teammate died and you were needing to get their card. You didn't have the option to decline, and once you were done with the minigame, it spat you out extremely close to zone, and you were immediately gliding, not even put back on the ground. And that is such an issue because, sure, if your teammate is knocked, they'll get rezzed, which is helpful, but if they're finished, and you get sucked up when you need to get their card, there's no chance of getting their card pretty much. Because the minigame in and of itself takes about a minute minimum if you try your best not to get any of the orbs that give time or better loot. And then it spits you out in the air instead of on the ground, close to zone. So if you're far away from zone, you have to glide that extra distance. But even if you're not far away from zone, even if you spawned, or even if you dropped somewhere that is in zone, the gliding will still take up too much time, and it's highly likely that you will not be able to get your teammate's reboot card. So, these issues alone caused a lot of people to not drop these areas, because they didn't want a lot of NPC aliens shooting orbs at them with UFOs and beaming them with ray guns, not rail guns. And I completely understand that. Like, I hate that happening to me as well, which is why I avoided these locations as much as possible. And they also don't want to be forced into a mini game that often can take away chances of being in a good position after the first zone. Because, like I already said, if you are in a spawn fight and one of your teammates is knocked and finished, and you get sucked up, there's nearly no way to be able to get their card after the flying saucer sucks you up and forces you into that minigame. And this is such an issue because it takes a huge amount of intelligence out of the spawn fighting. Because most people will just land a location that, oh, I don't care if it's contested, because I just don't want to get sucked up and forced into a minigame, and I don't want to get a ton of UFO orbs spammed on me. So I'm going to drop one of the locations that doesn't have those issues. And as a result, several locations, depending on which game you're in, became extremely unreliable and inconsistent because of these specific things. Like, for instance, the weather station, it's been my signature drop in solos and sometimes even duos and trios for, since Season 3? Or since Season 13? Like, this is my, 13, 14. This is my 5th season landing there. And I haven't had any problems with being contested at the weather station itself, other than Season 13 until this season. And the reason why it was like that in Season 13 was because Kit was in Caddy, which is right by the weather station, with the mythic shockwave launcher, which was fucking broken, and the mythic charged shotgun, which was the best item in the game at the point. And because of this, drop spots and being contested off spawn, it's much less related to, oh, how well does someone know this drop spot? It's more about how many teams drop on you. Because if you get just one team dropping on you, okay, it's fine. Because it's mainly a battle of intelligence. Who knows the location better? Who knows the angles better? It's not just raw. It's not just RNG and sometimes raw mechanics. But if you have 3 or 5, anywhere from, if you're contested by more than one team in pubs, it's pretty much a wash most of the time. Like as if they're landing extremely close to you trying to get your weapons. If that's more than one team, it's likely that even if you do win the spawn fight against every other team, you'll be in such a poor position afterwards to where it's likely you may die to storm because you don't have the right meds. You may have no shield and get beamed out of nowhere. You may get headshot sniped. It just puts you in such a poor position being contested normally, but being contested by more teams than normal because of these issues really makes it much more frustrating to drop at any given spot. And this in and of itself is definitely a huge deal. But another one of the main issues is how Epic nerfed a lot of the drop spots this season. Let's take Slurpee for example. Slurpee Swamps was one of the best drop spots, debatably the best drop spot on the map since the beginning of Chapter 2. And, okay, I can definitely see why. They have, or it had, because it's not there anymore, a ton of slurp barrels and a solid amount of chests. Then it became a bit worse, 100% chest spawn was taken out, but it wasn't game ruining, because after all, In Season 15, the NA East Trio FNCS champions landed at Slurpee, being Jacques, Slacks, and Acorn. But then this season, in the middle of the season, they took out one of the major buildings that had, I believe, 2 chests in it and quite a few slurp barrels. It was one of the main landed on areas in Slurpee. And then a few weeks after that, they took out all the slurp water, most of the slurp tubs, and they just removed a lot of the things that had the slurp water in it, whether it be the small the small tubs that look like oil tubs, whether it be those huge, gigantic tubs that are taller than some of the buildings in Slurpee. They removed so many of those, and it went from like 15 chests down to 11 chests. So that was another location ruined that was a location ruined by more than just the UFO drop spots and the flying saucers that a lot of people didn't want to land at. Then you had Holly, which started off as a surprisingly solid drop at the beginning of the season. Like, it has a really decent amount of chests, but then it became Holly Hatchery, where there was a constant zero-gravity zone, and there are a ton of NPC aliens there, which can really destroy a game. It made it so unplayable at times because you were constantly in a zero-gravity zone, most of the time, not constantly, when you were in Holly. And even if there were no other players, you had to worry about aliens unless you killed all of them, and the more time you spend worrying and trying to kill aliens, the less time you have to loot, the more shambles of a situation you will be in, and as a result, several people didn't want to drop there either, which I can completely understand why. So that's 2 drop spots that nearly no one dropped at for parts of the season, for completely understandable reasons. And then there's Coral. Now, Coral has been, I believe at least, the least popular drop spot on the map since its introduction in Season 13. And I can definitely understand why. But Coral has been nerfed quite hard, and this season wasn't what nerfed it. But here, I will just explain part of it. Now, I don't know exactly how many chests were in Coral when it was first introduced in Season 13. Let me address that. But in Season 13, when Coral first came out, it was not the best location, but it was fine. It gave you really bad positioning, but it gave you really bad positioning on the map. But oftentimes, that really bad positioning means you would get Coral uncontested, and Coral had a solid amount of chests in it, along with the area of the shark. Once the shark was torn up, I guess would be the best way to describe it. That had a few chests in it, the few islands around it, and then you could rotate into Sweaty or Pleasant, something like that. And if you could do that successfully, you'd be solidly set up. However, you would have to loot the main area as well, because the main area is where the majority of the chests are, not the islands to the side of Coral or the ruins of the shark. And once Season 14 came out, this isn't a problem with Coral. This is just a problem with how the game has been after Season 13. 100% chest spawn was taken out as soon as Season 14 started. Now, this caused a lot of ruckus in the community, and it still does today. There's no one in their right mind who does not want 100% chest spawn back in, and it's completely understandable. But Coral, unlike other locations, not only did it have 100% chest spawn taken away, but at the same time, 3 to 5, I don't know exactly what number, but it's somewhere from, it's either 3, 4, or 5 chests were completely removed from Coral. Not just from 100% chest spawn not being in the game anymore. It was literally impossible to get them in any game from Season 14 onwards. And for a location that is already so inconsistent and unreliable due to bad positioning and having to loot areas around it, being able or having to spend more time to get out of the area than other areas due to its elevation level, made Coral a really bad drop after 100% chest spawn was taken out, because it got even more chests removed completely, and the chests that were still in there weren't even guaranteed. Oftentimes, I could go as a solo and I'd walk out with like 2 or 3 chests of loot, like 2 bandages if I get in a fight, but that's likely not going to happen because no one lands at Coral. So if I'm trying to be realistic, let's say 5 bandages, maybe a medkit, a mini left, maybe not even drink, maybe a half pot in my inventory, not even drank yet, possibly a gray SMG, maybe a green AR, a green shotgun. And this season, like, it made Coral cool for around a week or so, but cool doesn't always equal good. The zero gravity mechanic was interesting, but overall it took a lot of the skill out of the game, and at the same time it didn't buff Coral in any way other than making an NPC be at Coral that sold. I was trying to say sells and sold at the same time, but by making it to where the NPC that sold the burst version of the pulse rifle was at Coral. However, this one NPC that requires a certain amount of gold to get one weapon that it's just really not worth landing there just for that one specific location. I mean, for that one specific weapon. You can land a different location, rotate into Coral just to grab that weapon, and get out. And you'd probably be much better. Sure, you may have to use a medkit or 2 if you end up in Storm, but at the same time, using barely any of your resources is better than having little to no resources at all. And that makes 3 locations that nearly no one landed at just even without the UFOs and the minigame saucers, and adding the issues of the minigame saucers and the UFO locations just made dropping a really bad thing this season, because it makes the chances of getting off spawn and doing well in a game so much worse, no matter the skill level of someone. And that's the main issue that I've had with this season. Overall, the season started out really well, like an 8 out of 10, but slowly, as they introduced the drop spots having UFOs just fly over them, and the minigame saucers, then the parasites, the season just heavily declined over time. Mostly in a way of being not nearly as balanced, and at least in my opinion, not nearly as fun. Anyways, guys, this has been Teflosion787. I hope you enjoyed, and I'm out of the house. Bye!